Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a great lunch. I'm so excited and so honored to be able to introduce our next um, keynote speaker, um, Kumu Hina is here um, and will share her session. And I'll read a little bit of the write-up about her session. Kumu Hina will host a session where she shares her unique experiences dealing with power and privilege and how she's worked as an activist in her community to promote change. Hina Wong-Kalu is a Native Hawaiian māhū, a traditional third gender person who occupies a place in the middle between male and female, as well as a modern transgender woman. Gunalchish Kumu Hina. I am so excited to welcome you here as part of our Power and Privilege Symposium, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, yeah. Mahalo, Colleen. Te aloha ia katoa pauloa te ia naina katou e noho mai nei. Mahalo anui katou hui ana. Mahalo anui ia oto pakahia pauloa no to oto hoonene ana mai. Me te hookipa pono mai au e launa puno i katou i te la mai tai. O au no te ia o Hinaleimoana Kwai Kong Wong-Kalu. A o au no ta oto wahi mea hai o lelo no te ia la. Thank you to all of you for this opportunity for us to spend time and space and for there to be sharing. Um, I'm not sure how the other presenters have done with their presentations, but I do very much welcome and enjoy interaction. I welcome questions. I welcome you to um, to reach out. If I've said something that strikes you, please feel free to comment right away or to get my attention. And I'd like to be able to have this time beneficial to you. And I want to respect everyone's time as well as everyone's perspectives. So again, if you're up for engaging and interacting while I am sharing, I am very, very much open to it. This symposium is entitled Power and Privilege, and I was asked to speak to you today from my personal journey and my perspective on engaging at different levels in my life as a Native person. So I'll do my best to take you on that journey. As you heard earlier in the introduction of my name, uh, I guess I should start off by saying the current me that is living in 2020 and clearly relegated to be a part of the American dominated system here in Hawaii, my homeland. So I know how to say my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I know how to um, put that forward to you. Um, I say that because, yes, I completely understand the traditional understanding of māhū, the third gender, and being in the middle. But because my life requires me to interface with so many different elements of living here in Hawaii, I made sure to pull myself out of that fluidity of the middle space and to do my very best to present and articulate myself as I want people to acknowledge. And it's it's worked, because for people to address me as sister, for people to address me as, in my parents' case, as their daughter, for people to address me in the feminine pronoun, um, what was required of me was my duty, obligation, and service to my culture, my people, and the causes that are important to my people. So any and all success in having people acknowledge me in the way I want them to, and seeking that power and privilege, has only come from my postulation of it. In other words, to not take the the mental disposition of being alienated from power or privilege, not playing the victim, and asserting myself as I not only see fit, but as I would expect from others who are engaging with me. Um, Here in my home, because Hawaii is a place that is so dominated by American politics, American governance, and its administrative ins and outs, and the little nuances that come with every foreigner that gets off the plane. It is important for people of my culture to really give some credence as to what is it that we put out, and what is it that we represent of our people and our culture. How do we approach scenarios of being governed and of being illegally occupied, of which the United States of America continues to illegally occupy my homeland? And, as many of you have seen in the elections and these past 4 years concerning the presidency and the running of the United States of America, I believe it's safe to say that the US is clearly divided, and almost halfway down the middle, see people on one side or the other. And it's not that those divisions didn't already exist, but they're just more clearly apparent now. Here in Hawaii, we have something very similar to that division. And that division is the half of my people that support federal recognition initiatives and that support continuing under the United States framework of existence and continuing to go to the feeding trough like other peoples who are all looking for their for their piece of the pie and their piece of the feed. And then there's the other half, of which I'm a part of, that sees a different political and economic future for Hawaii. With this said, one must clearly think about how is it that no matter what side one chooses, how is it that I, as a Native person, number one, number two, not only Native, but someone who is considered transgender by the larger world, and not only that, but number three, if I eliminate the Western kinds of views of transgender and LGBT discussion, and I pull it back to the Native perspective of being māhū, that's even more marginalized. And how is it that I will succeed at doing anything, whether it's advocacy for youth and education, for promulgation and promotion of language and culture? How is it that I will advocate for the politics and the political future of my people? The land issues that continue to plague us. Hawaii is filled with a plethora of contradiction, where in Hawaii, the foreigners that run and control Hawaii are quite popular and well known for pimping out our culture, but really paying a lot of lip service when it comes to honoring what our Native people say. So for those of you Native people here on this in this gathering today, and you listen to my words, and you're wondering, okay, well, what am I going to say to you that's supposed to contribute to you and your learning and your understanding? What can I say to you to hopefully uplift you or inspire you? And I will respond to that by saying that this one individual, I have maintained the philosophy of adhering to my culture and my people in as many ways as I can, to the degree that sometimes when it comes to an understanding like LGBT and an understanding of what it is that I'm going to empower and what it is that I'm going to embrace. Again, this is a symposium, power and privilege. Am I going to empower the system that gives power and privilege to me in the context of being an American, or to me in the context of being a native who has been subsumed into the larger American culture? Or am I going to come from a place of power and privilege, being a native in my own homeland? I'm not quite sure. I'm going to do a temperature check. If you are still with me, please feel free to comment in the chat. And if there's anybody who's not sure, then please also feel free to let me know. I'll continue on. Example, 2013 into 2014, Hawaii saw the protests surrounding Mahalo. Hawaii saw the protests surrounding advocacy for same-sex marriage. And I finally decided that I would come out and voice my support for it. However, 10 years prior, when the discussion first came to Hawaii, I was clearly in a place of mind and understanding that I'm Kanaka first, I'm Hawaiian first. Me having to be a part of that American and Western kind of rationalization and reconciliation of being who I am did not need ratification by some document to say that I love who I love and that this paper now will acknowledge that relationship. That was completely based on me. And I was not about to acquiesce to that. So again, when the question was posed to me, do you support same-sex marriage? And in 2004, I said, no. Why should I? It wasn't because I technically didn't support it, but it was because I wasn't supportive of the system that was requiring me to be married according to a document that was drawn up. That document can be done either by a government office, or it can be done in the setting of a church. The bottom line is that I wasn't going to be made to say I am only recognized as loving my partner if the system said it was okay. I determined that, not anybody else. So in 2004, I said, no, I don't support it because I'm Kanaka first. And as long as my family acknowledges and understands that this is whom I'm spending time with, then, it's up to me to determine whether or not I feel that my partner is worthy to bring into the fold of my family. Another example of power and privilege is someone whom would be considered transgender and therefore rather uncertain in terms of people going to give deference to me for my opinions. When I ran for political office in 2014, very staunch right-wing Republican outfits here in Hawaii denounced me based solely on their narrow perspectives and of course very derogatory kinds of opinions towards people like myself. And I could not be restricted. I could not be deterred, and I could not be put down by this kind of opinion. Number one, because you are a foreigner and you're in my homeland, and you do not get to dictate to me what is appropriate for me and not. Number two, as a foreigner, you adhere to a different set of values, different set of mores, and you subscribe to clearly different things, such as the polarization of American politics, Democratic versus Republican kinds of views that we've seen come to an overflow in these past many weeks. And, this constant onslaught of people whom would be so presumptuous as to try to impose their will and to impose their views on someone who is born of this land. This is my home, and they come from away. And so what I'm speaking to all of you about is the mindset that we allow ourselves to fall into, and how quickly or not we will allow ourselves to acquiesce to the will of others. Here in Hawaii, I clearly know that there's every opportunity for me to assert myself, and I do. It kind of makes me now, in light of the recent American political atmosphere, to not want to travel to the States. But I believe for good reason, because I have only seen the divide that has been promoted by this former presidency to really make your country, and I say your country because, again, your country illegally occupies my country. And yes, I'm required to hold a United States passport, but that is not where my loyalties lie. So again, power and privilege. Power comes from within. If I feel I am empowered, then I shall conduct myself as such. If I feel that this power has given me privilege, then I have to respect the fact that with great power and great privilege comes great responsibility. And therefore, availing myself to events like this and speaking and sharing, it's exactly what I must do. So for all of us here on this, on this Zoom opportunity, power and privilege, if we are mentally and emotionally bound to ideology and concept that impose upon us, that take our dignity away from us, that relegate us to thinking and believing that another person's reality is our own, then that is a matter for us to reconcile first and foremost within ourselves. And it requires us to think, be critical thinkers. What will we acquiesce to? What will we allow to drive us, to define us? Because of the perspectives that I have, sometimes I am looked at as a bully person. I can only say that I come from a road of being bullied, and I tolerate it none. As long as I'm in my home, I have every wherewithal to be who I am, to be with whom I'd like to be, and to exert what I see as appropriate for the political management, the social management, and the cultural management of the environment around me. My work should stand, I believe, as a testament to that. And I say this not because I want to put it in somebody's face, but I want to say to you all that you can avail yourself to whatever it is that you believe is your calling, and that you can do it. I serve as the chair on the Oahu Island Burial Council, which is it is a gubernatorial governor appointed position, and it's in public service. And as the chair, my position requires leadership, and I am not afraid to put it out there. Why? Because it's irrelevant, the fact of being a transgender. What's relevant and what's important is that my knowledge and my skill set avails itself to making decisions. And it's one of the reasons why I try not to focus too much on the norms of how a lot of other people might look at LGBT. I don't necessarily have to make it a point to say, "Hi, I'm Hina. I'm transgender. Hi, I'm." I don't have to identify in that way. I put it out there that I am Hinaleimoana. I am the child of Georgette, Moana Matias, and Henry Dayao Wong. I am a product of my grandparents, Mona Kanani Kalani, Kealoha, and John Furtado Matias, and Edith Gumkuluk and Henry Gunlim Wong. I am a product of my family. I am born and raised in the land of Liliha, Pu'unui, in the valley of Nu'uanu, in the moku of Kona on the island of Oahu, within the Pai'aina of Hawaii. I identify by my land and my people. I don't identify by saying that I have a penis or a vagina, or that I want a penis or a vagina as my partner, or that I want to wear certain things so that you can define me as what you think you need to define me as. I come from a place that understands my role and my responsibility. I continue, and I have and I will continue to put myself forward for the service of my family, my community, my islands, the name of my people, and the longevity of my language and culture. That's what's going to earn my place. What earns me my place, if I get any recognition in terms of something associated with LGBT, is simply a nice byproduct of is a byproduct of doing something good. I see here a question. What is my language and culture? Not quite sure how to address that, because I'm not quite sure from, maybe if you can expound on that a little bit, Terrell. Let's see. Okay, thank you for everyone who's commenting so far. Yes, but if you can expound on that that question a little bit, then perhaps I can speak to it. Temperature check. Hope everyone's still with me, and hope that, like, what is your culture? My culture. I come from a strand of Polynesians that the world acknowledges as Hawaiian, and my cultural connections as a Hawaiian. We are the Polynesians that are found here in Hawaii, and we are a part of the larger Polynesian family. There are many dialects of the Polynesian language. They're found in the islands of Tonga, Samoa, Tahiti, Rapa Nui, Aotearoa, and the entire Pacific region, with focus on that part of the region that is called Polynesia and some of the Polynesian island outliers. What this tells me is that, for example, in my culture, we do not place great emphasis on being one or another, male or female. Our pronoun is oya. Ovo, if you take your hand and you point to yourself, you say oau, talking about me or I. And you look at the person across of you and speak to them and say o'oi, you. And then you extend your hand and refer to someone else and you say oya, he, she, or it. Oya, that one singular word, speaks to the he, the she, and the it. So we do not assign a penis or a vagina to the pronoun. Unlike other languages that have masculine and feminine. In my culture, one of the most important understandings is that balance is what's most important. And there are elements of my people that um, other cultures might look at as strange, but the balance that is required for us to be at our best requires us to have what the West would consider uh, uh, a different or sometimes almost eclectic kind of mix of masculine and feminine, which leads me to this comment that in my world, being that I'm Kanaka first and Hawaii is my mainland, I will never ever refer to the land that you're all in Alaska, I'm assuming, but the greater continental US, that's not my mainland. And yes, we're politically connected to it, but I have no reason to try to keep attaching myself mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to it when it will only be to my detriment. Um, so therefore, I wasn't really too stressed over the presidential election because, you know, it's not worth my stress. um, but Hawaii is my mainland. It's my pico. It is where my umbilical cord is buried, and it is where I will die. And I have traveled the world, and I will maybe one day travel again and see other parts of the world that I've not seen. But for me, my home is what I'm all about. So I challenge all of you, viewers and audience, what are you about? Do you know your origins? Do you know the cultures that you come from if you are multi-ethnic? Do you know how those cultures influence you? Do you know, for example, I'm half Chinese. And if you ask me, do I know Chinese culture? Then I'm going to tell you yes, to a certain extent. I understand the things that my family has adhered to and the values and some of the terminology that helps to define how we look at ourselves with regards to one another and with regards to the rest of the world. For example, in Chinese culture, China is Middle Earth. China is the center of the world, and to a Chinese person born and raised in the homeland, um, you are the main person of Middle Earth, and everyone else is a foreign devil. I'm not sure of how each one here on this Zoom feels about that name China, but as someone who is a descendant of Chinese ancestors that migrated here to Hawaii on my father's side, um, it was taught to me we identify as Tongyan. Tongyan is saying who we are in that identity and where we orient and ground ourselves to. So that's only been a compliment in terms of reminding me that I am Kanaka, I'm Hawaiian, so I'm oriented and grounded here to my homeland. But again, power and privilege. This is a symposium on power and privilege. What position do you come from? Do you come from a place of power? I know clearly well that I'm part of the oppressed people here in my homeland. I know full well that this current government and the political establishment does not recognize us for too much of what we think is right and what we think is appropriate. All you have to do is look all over social media, YouTube, look in the news, and look at the issues that have impacted Hawaii's native people, and you'll find that we remain marginalized. And no matter how many thousands of people came out in protest of the protection of our mauna, our mountain, Mauna Kea, and no matter how far and wide that protest went, the people in political power still do not care. Why? Because they have no connection to Hawaii except that they might have been born and raised here, but they're not ethnically of this place, and they're not of the genealogy that I hold. So let me look at your questions. COVID, how has it affected me and my community? And do I believe gender duality itself is a specific and even limiting worldview? Okay, let me try to address these two things. COVID. Um, I come from a people that is socially oriented. Um, it kind of gets under my skin when I hear criticisms towards uh, a socialist system or socialism in our daily lives when it comes from my own people, because my people, Polynesians in general, do not come from a democratic society. We come from uh, leadership that is clear, often chieftainships, and the levels of chiefly rule and governance. And in traditional culture, failure to honor and observe this, um, to a person who's very American democratic society, would seem almost oppressive. But there was great order in a society that had great freedom to to be who you are and what you're all about, but yet have requirements of the people that we honor and respect one another based on some very simple understandings. One of them is a word that you're all familiar with, and that is aloha. Aloha is not just hello and goodbye. Aloha is love, honor, and respect. And so when we have love, or when we have aloha for our land, our natural resources, we will do everything that we can to ensure the stability and sustainability of our land and natural resources. We will not violate those things. In traditional times, violation of the laws that governed our ocean and the protection of our natural resources, our freshwater resources, those infractions could result in your death, and for good reason. You know, in today's Western society, um, people who there are some who have absolutely no regard for things like global warming and how we are impacted by man's footprint on this earth. The entire reason for the kind of governance that my people come from is because man's footprint on the earth and in this lifetime is not supposed to supersede or create disaster and destruction for the very earth that we are supposed to be entrusted to care for. That is the role of humans. We have uh, a wise saying, a proverb: Heli ka aina he kaua ke kanaka. The aina, the land, is chief. Kanaka, man, is its servant. Heli ka aina he kaua ke kanaka. It is not up to us to rule and dominate land and nature around us. It is up to us to serve it. And that is the mindset of the people that I come from. COVID. So COVID has resulted in requiring us to do things that go contradictory to our culture. So social distancing. How do you tell a Polynesian to social distance? Everything we do is based on multiple people all together. And that's how we survive, especially given a very Western dominated economy and even the way we live. You know, our people are criminalized and prosecuted for living in more traditional ways. And when people resort to living near or on the beach and outside of Western type of homes, uh, you see how thoroughly criminalized they are, and all you have to do is watch the news here in Hawaii. Um, to not only social distance, but to self isolate. How do you self isolate when we can't even survive without having three, four, five, sometimes 10, sometimes 15 people in a house? And that house isn't necessarily big like how you may have where you come from, but everybody, it, it, everybody in our Pacific Islander families, we understand living together in large groups. So everything about COVID has been very challenging to our existence, and to not be able to hug, to not be able to kiss, to not be able to engage and interact has been challenging. Many places I go, when we are not impacted by COVID, people come up and as a show of respect, they automatically will come up to me and they say, "Hi, auntie, hello, auntie, aloha, auntie," and they'll come and hug and kiss. And because that's what our people are taught to do when you meet with an elder. And of course, they consider me now an elder, which, hey, you know, I'll roll with it, but to a point. Um, and more so, not because I'm afraid of being older or being old for that matter. It just that I don't want people to go out of their way, and I don't want people to have to sacrifice on my behalf. So yes, COVID has greatly affected us, and what's even worse is the kinds of messaging and the kinds of interventions and the kinds of meting out of how our current government here in Hawaii is addressing COVID-19. And so they, by and large, have not been um, methods and interventions that are based on Hawaii and Hawaiian culture. So, yes, we we we're bound to the understanding of only us, only we, our people, are going to be able to take care of ourselves. And so sometimes, when you have to do contact tracing and you have to figure out who you were in contact with, where did you go, and all this kind of stuff. What do you do when you come from a house of 15 and when you work with many people and of course social stigmas, about even having COVID. It's like having other major viruses or diseases, and there's great ostracization. So it's not necessarily something that the political leadership in our little world here, they don't take into account those kinds of things. And so it's pretty much a very Western approach to dealing with our island people. The approaches really cater to foreigners who've moved here, or foreigners whom might have been born here, but essentially they are not of island ways. Gender duality is a specific and limiting worldview. Yeah. Yes, I do share some of this understanding that um, you know it can be very limiting. It can be very constricting. Again, because I come from a society that, depending on the dialect of your island, the he, the she, the it, the term is oya, or in some islands, koya. And with no penis or vagina attached to a pronoun, um, it reveals to us how our people feel. Um, that there's an understanding of male, there's an understanding of female. And for gender binary males and females, there are often prescribed uh, rules and expectations. However, there's great room and freedom and fluidity for the people in between that to avail themselves to one side or the other or both. And that is very much the case here in Hawaii. So the word māhū could be someone like myself whom has gone through uh, hormone therapy and other procedures that identify us as trans women. Um, my voice may not be high, but for my life and my presentation, um, I do my best to be addressed as she. Um, but again, that's only because I have to connect with the world that lives like that. And it gets very difficult sometimes when people don't know how to refer to you, they don't know how to address you, they don't know how to look at you, they don't know how to view you. And being in the middle is too confusing and too stressful for them. So I'm one of the few that, well, not few, but I'm amongst the numbers that pushed to be one way. But the word māhū can be someone like me, or can be someone the exact opposite of me, the female to male side. Māhū can also mean the gay male who has feminine characteristics, but not trying to assimilate his manner or dress to that of a woman. Māhū is a very encompassing term, and yes, to answer your question, um, blurring and blending encompasses a lot of how we Kanaka, or how we Hawaiians, express our humanness, and it's up to the individual how they feel that expression is most appropriate. We have heard of migration back to the home communities from which the generations may have left. Unfortunately, I think that many of my fellow Native Hawaiians who have migrated out, they are very attuned and accustomed and been ingrained in them the pursuit of the American ideal, the American dream. And that American dream consists of a type of living and a level of comfort, creature comforts that are very Western, that would preclude them from wanting to come back to the homeland. I would always want our people to come back. But sometimes, even when they come back, they're so changed, they're so altered, that some hold on to culture and language well. They hold on to the understandings of who we are as a people, and some are forever changed by their life living in the States or elsewhere abroad, and they no longer reflect Hawaiian values that are, how do I say it, without the tint or the shade or the that overlay of color that reflects the place that they have been in. Would it be accurate to call me two-spirited? I, knowing that my people don't necessarily, at least from within ourselves, acknowledge us as two-spirited. It's a concept that we can now embrace, but it's not something that originates from us. That is something that has been a point of reference from our Native brothers and sisters of the continent, the land of the Great Tortoise, Turtle Island. But if we had to articulate ourselves, being a two-spirited person is, I would say, an accurate English way to put it. So I'm okay with that. Let's see. A time check. It is now 1:45, and I'd like to give people the opportunity. If you'd like, turn on your camera and you can ask a question directly if you wish, or if you'd like me to speak towards something else. I'd like to call upon maybe Colleen and who, if there's anyone who may want to ask something, or Juliet.
This is Colleen, and I just want to say that I appreciate your sharing your worldview with all of us. And a lot of what you said, I think for me, I resonated with the acknowledgement of whose land we're on. And then I also appreciate your acknowledgement of the Western values don't always align with our cultural values, and just appreciate your messages today. And I wanted to know a little bit. So I acknowledge you as a Kumu, and I have done some homework on you and have seen your work with Mauna Kea, and as a song composer, as a Kumu. I appreciate you talking about your power and privilege, and I witnessed in some of the documentaries and videos about you, how that impacts the rest of the students you work with. And so I guess, what I want to know is, so I would refer to it as decolonizing.
Yes.
And I also see that you worked with the prison system, and I wonder how you were able to effectively get into the school and to the prison as your full self and implement decolonizing and lifting your culture and your language.
Thank you for that question. Good. I'm glad you asked that, because I'll tell you exactly why and exactly how. When it comes to my public appointed position, there's no rule that says we can or cannot. Just like going into a court of law, of which I did both. I went into a court of law, and I step into the arena of the council that I am the chair of. Most people feel that, well, since quote unquote, since everybody speaks English, we should just speak English. And I do not subscribe to that. So I run my meeting in Hawaiian. It doesn't mean that I do not insert English, but it means that a majority of my time is spoken in the language of the ancestral bones that we're referring to in our discussions and deliberations. And the council members that serve with me, some are possessing of some knowledge and some not. But I will always make sure that there's understanding by filling in the blanks with enough English. But I I come from a position and a place of internal power and authority. And just because everyone else doesn't speak my language doesn't mean that I have to subscribe to that. And I want them to know that they need to come correctly to the council, because they're not the ones in power. The Hawaiian voice is the voice in power. It's a very um, almost precarious mental and emotional space and place in the mind and heart. So another example, to work in a correctional facility, to work in the prison that houses men, and the majority of my attendees are male. I do have once in a while an occasional transgender, but they're men. And majority of the adult corrections officers are men. And I have absolutely no qualms. When some of the men, when I first started to go in there, both correction officers and inmates, the way they make their voice like hi and doing all of these kinds of sarcastic things or making comments, I stopped at the sergeant's desk when he made a comment, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm not sure what you think I am all about. And I'm not sure whether you feel that I am the equivalent to the other transgenders locked up in this facility, but I assure you that I am not here for what you think I might be here for. So I don't need to be." I remember he made a comment saying, "How come I wasn't all dressed up?" Because I had a film crew coming to document part of the work that you saw in the video. And I said, "I don't need to be quote unquote dressed up.
We are waiting early signs of fake friends."
Sorry, my computer talks to me. um, my role is to teach. That's my job. My role is not to come in there to try to get attention. My role is not to try to get in there and be some queen coming through the halls so that everybody can hoot and holler and do all this kind of stuff. I really have no time for that. I'm not even interested in that. You know, my personal life is mine, and it's on the outside of the world, and that's that. And don't ever do anything to question my integrity, because I will challenge you on it. And mentally, I'm not going to be intimidated by other men. In fact, nowadays I feed off of their fear. When I see their fear and it's masked in the form of derogatory comments, remarks, or telltale signs of insecurity by how they act, I feed off of that. And sometimes I turn it around and I use it to my benefit. But that's for another day. And that's because you will never ever reduce me to what you believe is my status and my position in life as māhū. Māhū is a privilege. Māhū, to be māhū is special. To be someone who possesses elements and qualities of both male and female, whether it be emotion or insight or perspective, that's a privilege. And it makes life sometimes even harder to manage. Because should I think about it this way or should I think about it that way? Should I handle it that way or should I deal with it in this way? Do I want to deal with the men folk that are either mocking or making a strange behavior towards me? Or do I come from a place of power and spin them and walk away? Anyway, so those are some examples. Let's see, what are people... Kaho'olawe and reclaiming and returning the Hawaiian homeland. The very short answer is that there are efforts towards political independence. However, the formula for recognizing and reinstating political independence requires, I call your attention to Taiwan and to Hong Kong. Okay, if you want to know about how the quote unquote the parent country, or in that's more about Hong Kong to China, whereas Taiwan was founded by the people who left the homeland and took that form of government with them, because the newer form of government was coming in. So, you know, if you want to know more details about reclaiming and returning a Hawaiian homeland, imagine what it would be like to be politically independent in Hawaii. Let's see. Question: how do I get strong like you? Being strong comes from a place within. If you tell yourself you're going to be weak, you will be weak. If you allow your mind to wander and to be dictated by other people's insecurities, by other people's frailties and fragilities, and if you allow yourself to be defined by what others think of you, then that's exactly where you're going to be. And I come from that place. But I realized that by adhering to things like that my father told me, he didn't care what I was going to end up being in life. He only cared that I finished school and that I took care of my grandmother. And that required humility, that required compassion, that required dedication, and that required a sense of duty and fulfillment of obligation. That required me to have filial piety, as many Chinese people like to have. And so in return, he continues to take care of me, he looks after me, and he loves me and respects me. Even though I started out as his son and became his daughter. I am my mother's caregiver. And so no matter that my mother struggled when I first transitioned, you know, there's not much to say. I'm the one taking care of her. And so, you know, maybe my life is not your personal choice, but it's what you must now bear in front of you, and you must acknowledge that I am the one responsible for you. Reclaiming Hawaiian homeland, though, I'll go back to that just for a second. There's a lot that needs to go into reinstating the rightful Hawaiian government. And as much as I support it, sometimes I do worry, because my people are so colonized and so American that I saw it evidenced in this last presidential election, where my people did not know how to identify themselves or view themselves or articulate their views in any other way except as an American Democrat or an American Republican. For me, there are traits, values, and aspects of both sides that some echo with me and some are completely opposite of what I feel is reflective of Hawaiian, and especially when it comes to leadership. A growing number of my people felt that President Trump was a good leader. And I challenged them to think about, really? if you look at our Hawaiian chiefs and you look at the kind of leadership that they demonstrated, what about this current American president reflected the kinds of values and traits that we as Hawaiians would encourage our children to aspire to? None. So with that, I believe we have 5 minutes left. Have I addressed what people have wanted to know in as succinct a manner as I could? Thank you for those of you who are left positive commendation on this sharing. I have 5 more minutes to avail myself to you.
I have so many questions, but I'm gonna save it for maybe an email.
Oh, okay. I love noodles. I'm
Okay.
I'm very Asian. I love soup and I love noodles. All kind of soup, all kind of noodles.
Okay. Love-
Anyone else? Don't be shy. Don't be ashamed.
Will you be coming to Alaska anytime soon?
I am not sure about coming to Alaska unless somebody physically invites me and creates a space and place and opportunity. And traveling outside of Hawaii at this current time of global pandemic is not my top priority. I'll go where there's duty, but not if that duty impedes upon my ability to take care of my mother. I can leave her for a period of time, but not too long.
I have some private chats that are asking me to make it happen. So yes, please.
You know how to find me.
Happily. Perfect. If there are any other questions or comments that you'd like to share, please post in the chat. We do have the next presentation that starts at 2. And I'll read that title really quick. At 2 o'clock, we have Picture a Scientist with Dr. Lisa Hofferkamp. So just want to encourage everybody to, if you have any more comments or questions, please post in the chat box. We're just so appreciative of you, Kumu Hina.
Mahalo.
Your time, your talent, your experience, your words. I read some of the chat and just appreciate that people are taking your words to heart and thinking and chewing and finding out how they relate to your messages. And I just appreciate that.
Mahalo. I wrote in the chat to everyone that if you type in Kumu Hina on YouTube, you'll learn more about how I feel, how I think, because there are different kinds of videos that happen to either put me out there or to present my views and my perspective. So if you want, you can check it out on your own. But I would like to express my gratitude and my appreciation to the native people of all of Alaska. Mahalo nui. Mahalo nui to all of you and the ancestors of your land for the opportunity to come into the space there. Mahalo nui to all of you in the present for taking your time. You could have done something else. I don't know if you put me on and then went around walking around in your space there at home and just had me as background noise. If you did, I don't take any offense to it, but I hope that maybe there was something in the sharing today that might contribute to you. So I give my appreciation to all of you, and I truly hope that, especially if you are a transgender or if you have a transgender person in your life.
Goodness sheesh. I love what I found too. I Googled on YouTube and found so many beautiful videos to watch. I think a few of them touched my heart. My family and I watched last night the prison documentary, the Space in Between documentary, just so powerful, so powerful. Goodness, for the work that you do.
Mahalo, thank you.
Ai, mahalo. Mai kailoa. Ganis cheese wa I katangi ach tuasakui in kakhaniki. Wasa yaki achwa ohan. Kelchis ka kashawata kutsati. Ganis cheese. I just want to acknowledge your contributions and words and say mahalo and Ganesh Chish. It was really wonderful to hear your perspectives in particular about Olelo Hawaii and how the gender, you can't push the gender in there the same way you can, like English is always forcing us to try and pick one. And we have that with our Tlingit language here. And thankfully we have some students over the past few years who've really advocated for space so that we can translate things in an ungendered way, and we've really tried to acknowledge them and to honor that space and say, why are we trying to force a gender in there, even a binary? There's not even a binary there in Tlingit. So really wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Mahalo. Thank you for sharing that, and mahalo to all of you.
We appreciate your time, Kumu Hina and Chief, Dr. Twitchell. We are about to transition to our next speaker, but we just appreciate everything you've shared. So many gifts. We hope to see you soon once this COVID passes. We have a connection to Hawaii as well. So Lance and I, we could send you an email about that, share the update with how we're connected.
I look forward to it. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Have a good day, everyone. Take care. Aloha.
Mahalo.